As a group of individuals journeyed together, one among them remarked that they must have traveled a considerable distance, asking if that was not so. The addressed man, with a calm demeanor, responded by inquiring why the other had suddenly adopted a formal tone. He then pointed out that they still faced one last challenge ahead, asking again if that was not so. Addressing the man directly, he called him Kuga, and with a stern expression, expressed gratitude for his assistance thus far. He continued, stating that he believed it would be best for their paths to diverge here. Kuga reacted with visible shock, a cold bead of sweat rolling down his face as he questioned what his teammate was saying, unable to believe what he was hearing. His voice trembled as he demanded an explanation, asking why they were casting him out after knowing each other since their student days. The man, unflinching, replied to Kuga, explaining in simple terms that he was a jack of all trades and a master of none, asking if Kuga understood now. He stated that this decision was for the best for everyone involved. The two women standing beside him watched Kuga in silence, their expressions unreadable. The man continued, declaring that Kuga would have to enter the hidden room alone. Kuga, stunned beyond measure, struggled to process this revelation. His words came out in fragments as he asked what the man meant, his disbelief evident. The man, maintaining his composure, told Kuga to consider this a farewell gift as he tossed a box toward him. Kuga caught the box midair, his mind racing as he silently acknowledged the reality of the situation. He thought to himself that perhaps this marked the end of his life as a dungeon explorer. As he stood there, one of the women addressed the man who had dismissed Kuga, calling him Sira, and remarking that his actions seemed excessive. Her expression was a mix of shock and concern as she asked if Sira did not think so. Sira, with his face partially obscured by his hair, responded in a somber tone, stating that it had to be done, even if it meant forsaking Kuga. Kuga observed the woman, whose name was Makari, and noticed her evident concern. He called out to her, offering a small smile as he expressed his appreciation for her care. His unexpected display of composure surprised the two women. Kuga then walked past Sarah, his face shadowed with gloom, and addressed him directly. He confirmed that Sarah had referred to the box as a farewell gift, asking again if that was not so. With a resolute expression, Kuga declared that he would gladly accept it. Without another word, he stepped into the hidden room. Inside, his gaze fell upon a demon-like woman with wings extending from her back. She observed him with a smug expression before bursting into laughter. Her voice echoed as she mockingly asked if the man before her intended to face her alone. Her laughter carried an air of derision, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. 50 years prior, dungeons had inexplicably appeared on Earth, bringing with them the revelation of magic and monsters. This discovery had led to the emergence of new professions. Among these, revival magic, capable of automatic resurrection but limited to a single use, spread rapidly, transforming dungeon exploration into a popular pursuit, often broadcasted as entertainment. However, within these dungeons lay a notorious challenge known as the Hidden Room of No Return. Its ominous title stemmed from the fact that no one had ever emerged from it. Those who entered had invariably expended their one-time resurrection magic, leaving them unable to re-enter any dungeon for the rest of their lives. The source of this infamous danger now stood before Kuga, a formidable monster whose presence alone spoke of peril. Snapping back to the present, the demon lady stood with an air of confidence, her laughter echoing through the chamber as she questioned the situation before her. She taunted Kuga, asking if he truly intended to face her alone. Kuga murmured something inaudible in response, his words drowned out by her amusement. She then mocked him openly, suggesting that he might have been banished, her laughter punctuating her observation. Kuga, with a calm expression, confirmed her guess, remarking that this was one way to describe his circumstances. Her laughter grew louder as she proclaimed that she had figured as much. The demon lady paused, her expression shifting to one of curiosity as she noted how composed Kuga seemed given his predicament. Kuga, unfazed, responded with an acknowledgement that he had somewhat anticipated this outcome, adding that, in a way, it might be for the best. She questioned whether he truly believed that and, after closing her eyes briefly, remarked with a playful tone that she was simply glad he had arrived. Kuga, startled by her words, asked why she would say such a thing. Opening her eyes with a sly smile, she clarified that it was because she had been bored, her reasoning as dismissive as it was unsettling. Without warning, she unleashed a powerful attack. Kuga swiftly drew his sword, bracing himself against the overwhelming force of her assault. As he successfully blocked the strike, the demon lady observed his technique with a mix of intrigue and disdain, commenting on the roughness of his swordsmanship. Before he could process her words, she vanished from sight, reappearing with a second devastating blow. Despite the ferocity of her attacks, Kuga managed to defend himself once more, prompting her to remark in surprised amusement at his resilience. Her voice carried both admiration and challenge as she acknowledged his ability to withstand her strikes. Kuga's thoughts raced as he realized the demon lady's sudden movements and whispered taunts were indicative of a vampire's unique teleportation skill. He silently conceded that, had she not spoken, he might have been caught off guard. Resolving to turn the tide of the battle, he steeled himself and charged forward. His strikes aimed to overpower her, but she effortlessly blocked his attacks at close range. Their eyes locked for a brief moment, the tension between them palpable. In a swift motion, the demon lady retaliated, launching a strike that pierced through Kuga's shoulder, leaving a gaping wound. He staggered but quickly activated a healing spell, the injury mending itself almost instantly. The sight of his rapid recovery left the demon lady momentarily stunned, her disbelief evident as she acknowledged his unexpected use of healing magic. She speculated aloud that he must be a jack of all trades, a notion Kuga confirmed with a calm nod as he resumed his fighting stance, sword poised and unwavering. The phrase, jack of all trades, echoed in his mind, stirring memories of the title that had once defined him. Though labeled a hero, he knew the truth of his abilities. He was proficient in swordsmanship, defensive magic, offensive magic, support spells, and healing, excelling at all but mastering none. This versatility, while remarkable, came with its limitations. Unlike specialists who could fully harness their expertise, Kuga's broad skill set left him unable to dominate in any one field. In the world of dungeon exploration, where the party size was constrained by the barriers to just 4 members, forming a team of specialized individuals was considered the optimal strategy. Considering the dynamics of a party, it is essential to maximize each member's strengths. Kuga recalled his former party members, each with their own specialties. Sarah, the Sword Saint, excelled in physical attacks. Yulia, the Saintess, specialized in magical combat. Mikari, the support caster, provided crucial assistance to the team. Kuga himself, lacking a specific specialty, was often relegated to the role of healer to balance the group. Yet, fighting this vampire awakened something entirely new within him. It was a sense of freedom, a liberating feeling that came from battling without the burden of keeping everyone alive. Snapping back to the present, Kuga watched as the vampire charged toward him, her voice cutting through the air as she addressed him as a human. She mentioned something that had been on her mind, asking about the peculiar object floating nearby. Kuga hesitated, stunned that she would bring this up in the heat of battle. After a brief pause, he acknowledged her question, confirming that she was indeed referring to the hovering device near him. She confirmed this and waited for his explanation. Kuga revealed that it was a streaming drone, eliciting immediate curiosity from the vampire. She picked up the device, inspecting it closely, and asked what he meant by streaming, even comparing it to betrayal in her own peculiar way. Kuga blinked in disbelief at her comparison, wondering how he had ended up explaining the concept of streaming to a vampire. He began carefully, detailing how the drone transmitted video footage for the entire world to see. He explained that viewers could leave real-time comments, demonstrating this by projecting a holographic screen that displayed the incoming messages. As Kuga scrolled through the comments, the vampire's initial hostility faded. She listened intently, her glowing eyes betraying a mix of interest and fascination. Her face turned slightly red, a reaction that seemed uncharacteristic for someone of her confidence. Her curiosity piqued as she asked, brimming with excitement, if this meant their fight was being broadcast to everyone. Kuga confirmed, explaining that the drone was a parting gift from his former party before they left him. Her reaction shifted again, a chill running through her as she bowed her head slightly, thanking him with a sincerity that took him by surprise. She smiled faintly, admitting that he was the first to explain things to her so kindly. Her eyes still glowing with enthusiasm, she asked what the comments were saying at that moment. Kuga, pulling up the holographic display once more, began scrolling through the comments. He noted that many were focused on the vampire herself, specifically mentioning how cute she looked. Her reaction was immediate and dramatic. Her eyes and mouth widened in shock as she let out a startled cry. She moved closer to examine the screen for herself, her expression shifting from disbelief to embarrassment as she read the remarks. She asked in a flustered voice if this was truly what everyone was saying in the comment section. Kuga confirmed, adding that many comments were about her appearance. Her face flushed even deeper, and she quickly covered it with her hands, muttering something about how insolent the viewers were. With an upset expression, she asked if all humans were like this. Kuga, confused by her anger, hesitated before asking what she meant by insolent. He then added that he thought the comments were simply people being honest. Her shock at hearing this made her blush, the idea of honesty from strangers catching her off guard. Nervously, her face still red, she called out to him, asking if he would mind if she said something a little strange. Kuga's eyes widened in disbelief, wondering what she might say. Then, with her face still flushed, she asked if he could teach her how to stream. The unexpected request left Kuga stunned, as if a fuse in his brain had blown. Struggling to process her words, he asked her to clarify, and she calmly explained that she meant exactly what she had said. She smiled, her face still tinged with redness, and expressed her newfound interest in streaming. She added that she wanted him to teach her more about it. Still in shock, Kuga reluctantly acknowledged her request, but he questioned whether it was even possible for her. He pointed out, half teasing, that she was the dungeon boss and wondered aloud if she could even leave her room. He laughed loudly at his own remark, but she retorted with a sharp, confident answer, claiming that she absolutely could. She went on to explain that she received notifications whenever an invader appeared. After preparing herself, she could teleport in a hurry, just as she had earlier when she was rudely woken from a nap. She added, almost pouting, that she had to fix her hair and put on her clothes before rushing over. She asked if he understood now, confidently stating that she could indeed leave her room. Then, her face bright with excitement, she grabbed his sleeve and insisted they should stream together. Her enthusiasm grew as she leaned closer, catching his scent and remarking on how pleasant his blood smelled. She called him the perfect partner, leaving Kuga wondering how the situation had spiraled so wildly out of control. His mind drifted to the past, recalling how this all began. From teaching her how to stream to her proposing that they stream together, it was a whirlwind. He reflected on his earlier days as a student, streaming dungeon explorations with his colleagues for fun. Despite all his efforts, he had only ever been the protector, the one fighting to keep everyone safe. He was never the one to step into the spotlight. He realized how much this had shaped his role and his perception of himself, remembering the despair he felt when Sarah gave him the streaming drone as a parting gift. At the time, he accepted it out of sheer hopelessness, thinking his life as a dungeon explorer had come to an end. Now, faced with this strange vampire, he thought about how surreal it all was. If someone asked him if he was in his right mind, he would have to admit that he wasn't, but he decided it didn't matter. Smiling at her, he told her it was all right and agreed that they could stream together. Her delighted reaction brought a smile to her face as well, marking the beginning of something completely unexpected. What had started as a story of exile transformed into the creation of a unique, never-before-seen duo. Kuga commented that it was fine if she wanted to stream, but asked if she actually had something specific in mind for the stream. She responded simply with the word Alicia, leaving him puzzled about her meaning. Noticing his confusion, she clarified, saying that her name was Alicia. Kuga, still processing, remarked that if she didn't mind him asking, he wanted to know who had named her. She answered that she didn't know, explaining that she had been aware of her name as Alicia from the moment she gained consciousness. Kuga acknowledged this with a slightly shocked expression before introducing himself, stating his name and age. Alicia, hearing this, commented that his name sounded cool, asking if it was really his actual name. He replied by asking if she genuinely thought so, then redirected the conversation to ask if there was anything specific she wanted to stream. She hesitated before explaining that she had too much free time lately. She added that something had occurred to her, prompting Kuga to ask what had crossed her mind. Alicia, her eyes gleaming with determination, said that she wanted to rise above everyone else. Kuga, shocked at her ambition, questioned whether she was serious. She replied by asking if he knew about the super strong monsters called final bosses, and suggested that perhaps she should try becoming one herself. She said this with an excited expression and an unwavering resolve in her voice. Kuga, still stunned, asked how exactly she planned to achieve such a goal. Alicia placed a hand on her chest and explained that the first step was to become an S-ranked boss. Pulling out a piece of paper, she handed it to him, urging him to take a look. The paper, titled How to Become an SS Rank Boss, listed several requirements. The first was to defeat over 30 invaders. The second was to defeat an A-rank party. The third involved defeating an S-rank party. The fourth required making an S-rank boss yield to her. The fifth involved creating a proper boss castle or lair. And the last step was freeing up an SS rank boss slot. Kuga read through the list, thinking to himself how surprisingly detailed and rigid it all seemed. He focused on the first three requirements, especially the need to defeat dungeon explorers, and asked in shock if defeating them was truly necessary. Alicia replied that she thought so, but as soon as she said it, Kuga's face grew gloomy. Noticing his shift in demeanor, Alicia's excitement faded, and she commented with a sad expression that she might have gotten too carried away without thinking things through. She then pointed out that Kuga himself was an invader, wondering if he wouldn't want to fight against his own kind. Kuga, with a blank expression, assured her that it was fine and that he didn't really mind doing it. Alicia, utterly shocked, stared at him with wide eyes and an open mouth, asking what he meant. He explained that, as a matter of fact, there was no rule against explorers fighting each other. Her expression of disbelief grew even more pronounced as he elaborated further. He explained that all dungeon explorers were required to have auto-revival magic cast on them, and without it, they couldn't pass through checkpoints to enter dungeons. He described how this magic, called Relieve, worked, ensuring that if an explorer died inside a dungeon, their body would be transported outside and revived. Kuga explained that the magic used by explorers, known as Relieve, worked only once in a lifetime. If an explorer died and the magic activated, they could never enter a dungeon again. He elaborated that since explorers were guaranteed one revival, they were afforded a certain level of freedom under their own responsibility, and fighting among themselves was one of those freedoms. He added that some streamers even focused on battles between explorers as their primary content. He mentioned that there were currently 4 S-ranked parties, highlighting that the third most prominent one was known as duelists. Alicia, still processing these details, asked if that was really true, visibly shocked by the Explorer playbook. She then remarked that one of the requirements to become an SS-ranked boss was to defeat an S-rank party, pointing out that there were only 4 such parties. Kuga confirmed this. She followed up by asking about him, and he admitted he used to be part of an A-ranked party but was no longer involved. She closed her eyes briefly before saying she understood, then added that she thought she was starting to grasp the situation. Alicia asked if it was true that some people were ranked above him, to which he confirmed. Kuga, curious, asked if she had a rank herself, noting that she wasn't listed among the S-ranked bosses. She replied that she did not have any rank at all. He speculated aloud that it might be because she was a hidden boss, and she agreed, saying that starting from 0 sounded more fun. She asked if he didn't think so, then announced with excitement that their channel's purpose would be to document her journey as a rankless boss striving to become the final boss. She declared that they would turn it into a full-fledged documentary. Her enthusiasm caused her face to flush red as she confidently outlined her plan. She continued, stating that by doing this, she intended to instill fear in humans and discourage them from engaging in tasteless activities like dungeon streaming. Kuga responded with agreement, though internally, he wondered what his role in all this would be. Hours later, Alicia stood in front of the streaming den and greeted their audience. A flood of comments began pouring in, with many viewers expressing excitement and complimenting her beauty, while others asked if she was real. Alicia blushed deeply as she smiled brightly at the camera, amazed that so many comments had already appeared. She suggested they begin their first stream, asking Kuga if they should start. Kuga noticed the overwhelming number of comments and felt beads of sweat forming as he realized how impressive this turnout was for a first stream. Alicia turned to him, asking if this wasn't an incredible start. He nervously affirmed her statement, all while thinking to himself that this might be the first time in history that a dungeon monster had done something so unusual. Word about the banished hero and the dungeon monster collaborating spread rapidly, drawing an unexpected level of attention to their endeavor. Alicia, brimming with excitement, declared that for their first stream, they would be doing explorer hunting. Her voice was filled with enthusiasm as she shouted the announcement, adding a cheerful exclamation. Kuga, startled, asked if she truly meant it. She affirmed with determination, clarifying that they would indeed be hunting explorers. The comment section erupted once more, filled with reactions ranging from disbelief to curiosity, as viewers questioned whether she was serious. The flood of comments continued, adding even more energy to their unusual and groundbreaking stream. Alicia suddenly drew Kuga's attention, pointing out that invaders had arrived. Kuga confirmed as they peeked from behind a rock, noting with a resigned tone that it seemed to be the case. Alicia, with a smile, remarked that they had appeared without hesitation. Among the invaders, one of them enthusiastically announced that they had finally made it this far, commenting on how nostalgic it felt to meet again as old high school clubmates. Another, a female member, responded in agreement, adding with an excited and slightly flushed face how she was especially happy to be in the same party as the speaker, whose name was Kenzu. Kenzu, stunned by her words, widened his eyes and mouth in disbelief, asking internally what she meant. Their gazes locked, sparks seemingly flying between them, but their moment was abruptly interrupted as Alicia launched a sudden attack. The invaders, caught completely off guard, shouted in alarm as two of their comrades, Chikako and Yomagoida, fell. The sight of their companions lying on the ground, blood pooling beneath them from the fatal wounds inflicted by the demon, left the remaining invaders horrified. The injured pair stretched their hands weakly, as if reaching for help, calling out to their comrades who were still standing. Kenzu, now filled with rage and despair, felt his emotions boil over. His thoughts raced as he questioned why things had ended up like this. Everything had been going smoothly that day, with their monster hunting proceeding as usual and no significant issues arising. He reflected bitterly that they had faced near-death situations before, but had always managed to pull through. This time, however, things had spiraled out of control in an instant. Before Kenzu could act, the demon lady swiftly defeated the remaining two invaders, leaving only Kenzu and the girl, Akina, who had just confessed her feelings to him. Both now lay bloodied and helpless on the dungeon floor. Seeing Akina struggling nearby, Kenzu painfully crawled toward her, calling her name with a voice choked by emotion. She, too, desperately tried to inch closer, their outstretched hands trembling as they fought to touch one another in what they both feared would be their final moments. Above them, Alicia stood with a triumphant smirk, her laughter echoing through the dungeon. Her expression was one of malicious delight as she thanked the explorers for their hard work, mocking them for their futile struggle. Kenzu, overwhelmed with bitter tears streaming down his face, demanded to know who she was. With unsettling calmness, Alicia responded, declaring that they were simply hunting humans. Kenzu, horrified by her words, widened his eyes in disbelief, struggling to process what he was hearing. He cursed her under his breath, his mind reeling at the absurdity of the situation. Alicia, unbothered by his reaction, questioned why he appeared so outraged, asking whether it was not the same thing humans did regularly in dungeons. Kenzu, confused and struggling to comprehend her point, could only respond with a stunned expression. Alicia pressed on, asking why humans streamed dungeons, her tone growing sharper. She speculated aloud whether it was for money, recognition, or some other selfish purpose. Kenzu, now visibly seething with veins bulging on his forehead, could do nothing but curse the demon lady, his anger and despair boiling over as he realized the grim reality of their defeat. Alicia remarked with a faint grin that she could somewhat understand his frustration, though her expression remained cold. She noted how they were risking their lives for nothing more than the trivial hobbies of humans. Her smirk deepened as she added that he should be grateful. Kenzu, overwhelmed by rage, cursed her furiously in his mind, calling her unspeakable names and damning her existence. Struggling to stand despite his injuries, he attempted to rise and fight. Alicia, unfazed, struck him down with a powerful attack that shattered his resolve. Her tone dripped with mockery as she coldly observed that she couldn't quite hear what he was trying to say. Kuga, watching from the sidelines, reflected silently on the brutality of the scene. Alicia had gone all out, ruthlessly dispatching the group. He noted to himself that the defeated explorers had been a promising B-class party, now wiped out in an instant. His thoughts lingered on the absurdity of it all, considering how a vampire like Alicia should not even be casually roaming this floor. Her power far exceeding the norm. The encounter, he mused, had been nothing but a tragic accident. In his mind, he pitied the poor souls who had fallen victim to such a cruel twist of fate. Alicia snapped him out of his thoughts with a playful remark, asking if the stream was gaining decent viewership. Kuga replied that it was, to which Alicia responded with a villainous smile, pleased with the audience's engagement. Turning her attention to the camera, she asked the viewers directly what they thought of the spectacle, inquiring if they were horrified yet. The comments section erupted in response. One viewer lamented how awful it was to watch, another called it disgusting, and a third mourned the poor souls who had been mercilessly slaughtered. Others cursed Alicia, branding her a monster and demanding her demise. Alicia laughed loudly at their reactions, fully embracing their anger and disgust. She remarked that they were absolutely correct in their assessments, acknowledging their hatred with a smug satisfaction. Her tone shifted as she added that perhaps now they would learn to stop their reckless dungeon streaming. A new wave of comments flooded in, surprising her. Some viewers admitted they felt an inexplicable thrill, as though their brains were on fire, marveling at the strange rush the scene evoked. Alicia, caught off guard by this unexpected reaction, stared at the screen in disbelief. Never in her wildest dreams had she anticipated such responses. Other viewers began defending her actions, pointing out how the slain explorers had themselves exploited monsters for entertainment, testing their regeneration limits or slicing them apart without care. These defenders questioned if such people truly deserved sympathy. More commenters chimed in, agreeing with these sentiments while resolving to continue watching the stream for now. The wave of reactions left Alicia visibly shaken. She shouted in a panic, urging the viewers to calm down. Her voice, tinged with nervous desperation, insisted that monsters were truly mean and terrifying. Yet another viewer thanked her instead, claiming they felt as though they had awakened to something new. Alicia, now drenched in nervous sweat, turned to Kuga with wide eyes and a trembling voice, asking if humans might actually be monsters too. Kuga, with a wry smile and twisted expression, replied ambiguously. Alicia pressed on, concluding that humans might indeed be worse than monsters, her voice quivering with disbelief. Kuga, silently agreeing in his mind, found himself unable to deny the unsettling truth of her statement. Alicia's carefully crafted plans, now derailed by the unpredictable reactions of humans, seemed destined for chaos. Alicia and Kuga had wandered to a quiet place where Alicia turned to him with a bright smile, her expression playful as she gestured for him to take her hand. Kuga, caught off guard, stared at her in visible confusion and hesitated, his reluctance clear. Sensing his unease, Alicia tilted her head, her curiosity growing as she asked if he was shy or if something was wrong. Kuga mumbled an awkward response, admitting in a soft tone that he felt a little shy. Alicia's laughter broke the tension as she stepped closer, her cheeks tinged with red, teasing him lightly about his timidity. Kuga's face flushed further, betraying his nervousness as beads of sweat appeared on his brow. Despite his awkwardness, Alicia gently took his hand, urging him to follow her so they could wrap things up. As they continued walking, Alicia's enthusiasm didn't wane. She turned to Kuga, her eyes sparkling as she asked what he thought of the place, explaining with an air of mystery that it was called Monster Town. Kuga, intrigued yet puzzled, asked what she meant. Alicia responded matter-of-factly that the name was quite literal, revealing that only monsters were typically allowed entry. Her nonchalant explanation sparked a wave of surprise and curiosity among the viewers watching the livestream. One commented that the concept of Monster Town was fascinating, while another remarked on the charming vibe of the idea. More comments rolled in, with viewers gushing about the small, adorable monsters they could glimpse, calling them irresistibly cute. Alicia, her excitement infectious, continued to elaborate, playfully pointing out that Kuga might be the first human ever to set foot in Monster Town. Her statement left Kuga in shock, his eyes wide as he stammered, questioning if this was really okay. Alicia reassured him, dismissing any concerns as unnecessary and confidently stating that it was fine since there were no explicit rules against it. Kuga, still unconvinced, muttered about the difference between rules and reality, prompting Alicia to give him a strange look before assuring him again with confidence. As she spoke, she hesitated momentarily, unsure of how to address him, her face clouding with fleeting gloom before brightening once more. She suddenly mused aloud about their relationship, stumbling over her words as she admitted uncertainty. Quickly shaking off her moment of vulnerability, she suggested they label him as her special other for now, asking if he was fine with that. Kuga, flustered but resigned, accepted the title. Casually embracing the new dynamic, Kuga tried to shift the focus, pointing out that they were streaming in Monster Town, wondering aloud if that was really a good idea. Alicia, unfazed, replied that no one was stopping them, so it should be fine. The viewers seemed captivated, one commenting on Alicia's carefree nature, while another noted that this might be the first live stream ever conducted in Monster Town. Some even admitted they wouldn't have known the place existed if not for the stream. Kuga couldn't ignore the undertones of Alicia's actions, realizing that while her primary goal might be to establish herself as the final boss, she clearly had another motive. It seemed her deeper aim was to instill fear in humans, discouraging them from engaging in thoughtless activities like dungeon streaming. This revelation sparked a lively discussion among viewers, one of whom remarked that her goal had a surprisingly honorable vibe. Another commented on the potential for humans to change their perspectives if they understood that monsters had lives of their own. Lost in his thoughts, Kuga wondered if Alicia had planned all of this long before their visit to Monster Town. Alicia, meanwhile, gestured for him to hurry up, her tone urging him to follow so they could head to the place where she was staying. Kuga nodded in agreement, his steps faltering slightly as he walked past a crowd of monsters. Their reactions were nothing short of astonishment, their wide eyes and gaping mouths a clear indication that this was likely the first time a human had ventured among them. Whispers rippled through the crowd, their murmurs creating an undercurrent of tension as they watched the unprecedented scene unfold. One of the monsters, towering and formidable, stepped forward and addressed Alicia with a respectful nod, calling her by the title Vampire-sama. Kuga froze in shock, his gaze locking onto the massive creature that now loomed before him. The comment section of the live stream erupted with excitement, viewers marveling at the sudden appearance of what some identified as a minotaur. Observing the monster's sheer size and presence, Kuga's shock deepened, his mouth and eyes widening in disbelief as cold sweat began to bead on his face. Alicia, unfazed and casual, greeted the minotaur warmly, her smile bright as she acknowledged its presence and asked what it had been up to. The comment section buzzed with speculation about the apparent camaraderie between Alicia and the minotaur. Alicia turned to Kuga with a playful grin, suggesting she introduce him to her friend, Mino-chan. She cheerfully explained that Mino-chan was her close companion, then informed the minotaur that Kuga was her special other. The minotaur bowed slightly in response, its immense frame dipping gracefully, though its tone betrayed surprise at the unexpected revelation. Nevertheless, it managed to politely introduce itself as Minotaurus, expressing that it was pleased to meet Kuga despite the shocking nature of Alicia's announcement. Kuga, still uneasy in the presence of such an imposing figure, stammered a nervous response, thanking the Minotaur for its courteous greeting. Minotaurus shifted its attention to Alicia, expressing mild concern about her decision to bring a human into Monster Town, stating it might not be the wisest choice. Alicia tilted her head in curiosity, pressing the Minotaur to explain its reasoning. The Minotaur avoided specifics, suggesting it was simply common sense and encouraging her to consider the implications. Alicia chuckled, commenting with amusement on how unexpectedly gentle and cute the Minotaur's voice sounded. The Minotaur turned back to Kuga, apologizing for its bluntness and admitting that Kuga must possess a remarkable amount of courage to enter a town populated entirely by monsters. The comment drew nervous laughter from the Minotaur itself, a bead of sweat forming on its own face as if acknowledging the absurdity of the situation. Kuga, still overwhelmed, managed to mumble a shaky apology, his anxiety plain to see. Viewers joined the fray, with one agreeing that Minotaurus had a point, while another noted the Minotaur's unexpectedly endearing presence, dubbing it a cute cowgirl. Kuga, for his part, wrestled with doubts about whether his presence in Monster Town was truly acceptable. Yet, he reminded himself of the two compelling reasons he had no choice but to be there. First, Alicia had already alienated him from human society by targeting a virtuous party, making his return risky. Second, Alicia herself was unlikely to leave the dungeon, and separating from her without reliable communication meant the risk of losing her forever. Despite his logical reasoning, Kuga couldn't help but question the situation's sanity. The comment section grew livelier, with one viewer remarking that Kuga had not been entirely sound of mind since his time with Kumazemi. Another chimed in, suggesting that Kuga's current actions were hardly surprising given his track record. Alicia's expression darkened as she read these comments, clearly upset by the remarks about Kuga. She asked aloud about Kumazemi, prompting Kuga to explain that it was the name of his former party. Alicia simply nodded in acknowledgement before shifting the conversation. Alicia then turned back to Minotaurus, her voice firm as she declared that while Kuga might be human, he was still her special other. She assured the Minotaur that she would not allow anyone to harm him, her tone carrying a weight of finality that left no room for doubt. Mino-chan raised the question of what exactly Alicia meant by referring to Kuga as her special other, which prompted a lively comment from one of the viewers who noted that Mino-chan seemed to be the only one thinking clearly. As the stream ended, Kuga and Alicia were seen walking deeper into Monster Town, with Alicia suggesting they take a brief stop at a nearby shop. Kuga agreed, casually mentioning that it was no problem. As they approached the shop, Alicia turned to him and asked what he liked. Kuga, caught slightly off guard, mentioned apples. Hearing this, Alicia reached for a basket of apples and told him with a bright expression that she liked apples too, particularly green ones. She asked the monster running the shop for the price of 2 apples, and when the vendor replied with a figure of 500 yen, Kuga froze in place, visibly shocked. Alicia noticed his reaction and asked if something was wrong, but Kuga quickly brushed it off, saying it was nothing, all while internally questioning if he had misheard. Alicia handed over the money to the vendor, cheerfully completing the transaction. The smooth exchange of currency left Kuga even more astounded, prompting him to burst out in shock. Both Alicia and the vendor turned toward him with questioning looks, and Alicia once again asked if he was certain everything was fine. Kuga, still trying to compose himself, replied that it was just surprising to see monsters using the same currency as humans. Alicia, staring into the distance with a faintly puzzled look, commented on whether it was really such a shocking revelation. Kuga hesitated but ultimately affirmed that it was, adding that it felt unusual. In his thoughts, Kuga began piecing together the implications. If Japan's yen served as the dungeon's currency, it raised questions about whether other dungeons in different parts of the world also used the local currencies of their respective countries. Kuga recalled that dungeons had been confirmed in 9 nations worldwide, including Japan, the United States, China, France, Egypt, Brazil, and Australia. Japan's dungeon entrance, located in Tokyo's Arakai area, seemed somewhat isolated compared to others, especially given its position in East Asia with China and Southeast Asia nearby. This isolation likely explained why most explorers in the Japanese dungeon were locals. Kuga turned to Alicia, asking how monsters acquired this currency. Alicia, seemingly caught off guard, paused before explaining that monsters were paid a daily stipend. Kuga could hardly believe his ears, exclaiming that it sounded like a form of basic income. Alicia tilted her head in confusion, asking what he meant by that, but Kuga dismissed the subject, telling her not to worry about it. Shifting gears, Kuga noted that since they were both using the same currency anyway, he should pay for the apples. Alicia, with a radiant smile, gently insisted that he let her handle it, encouraging him not to be so modest and to allow her to treat him this time. Afterward, the two arrived at Alicia's temporary residence, where she offered Kuga a seat, her smile warm as she urged him to make himself at home. Alicia explained that the place was merely a temporary dwelling until her actual castle could be constructed. Initially, Kuga considered staying at an inn, as some were available, but Alicia, without a hint of hesitation, casually invited him to stay at her home. Noticing Kuga standing hesitantly outside the door, she called out to him, asking why he was lingering instead of coming inside. When dinner time arrived, Alicia revealed her meal, a single green apple. Kuga, unable to hide his astonishment, stood frozen as he realized this was all she planned to eat. Alicia, noticing his reaction, asked what was wrong. Kuga, struggling to process what he was witnessing, mumbled that it was nothing. Unperturbed, Alicia calmly proceeded to enjoy her lone green apple, leaving Kuga silently questioning the strange world he had found himself in. Some moment later that evening, Alicia was seen soaking herself in the bath, while Kuga prepared a quick meal for himself, tearing open the package and eating it in silence. When the time came to rest, Alicia began acting strangely, prompting Kuga to notice her discomfort. She nervously waved her hands, trying to downplay her feelings, but ultimately admitted there was an issue. Her face turned red as she pointed out that there was only one bed in the room. Kuga, hearing this, froze in shock, beads of sweat forming on his face as nervousness overtook him. As both of them stared awkwardly at the lone bed, Alicia began to panic, muttering repeatedly to herself that she had completely overlooked this detail. She desperately tried to think of a solution, repeatedly telling herself there must be an answer. Then, with increasing alarm, she considered whether she would have to share the bed with a human. Quickly, she dismissed the thought, shaking her head and exclaiming internally that such a thing was unheard of. Kuga watched her exaggerated reaction in silence, reflecting on how they had already done several unheard of things that day. Alicia eventually acknowledged to herself that she had been the one to invite him in, and realized she could not, in good conscience, make her guests sleep on the floor. With a frustrated expression, she declared there was no other choice, and that she would sleep on the floor instead. Before she could act on her decision, Kuga reassured her by mentioning that he had his sleeping equipment ready. He unpacked a portable bedroll from his bag, swiftly setting it up on the floor. In no time, he lay down, covering himself and closing his eyes to sleep. Alicia stood nearby, watching him silently as he slept. Her gaze lingered for a long moment before a curious expression crossed her face. She licked her lips and then moved closer to him, eventually kneeling beside him. She reached out, taking his hand, and leaned in as if preparing to bite. Just as her teeth neared his skin, Kuga's eyes snapped open. He stared at her in utter shock, his expression horrified as he realized her intentions. Alicia froze, her own face twisting with guilt as she apologized profusely. She confessed that it was strange the anesthetic had not worked, gesturing to the syringe still in her hand. Kuga, confused and wary, asked what she had been doing. Alicia, appearing on the verge of tears, admitted that she only wanted to borrow a small amount of his blood. Kuga, still stunned, responded calmly and suggested she could have simply asked. Alicia apologized again, explaining that she had been unable to forget the taste of his blood from earlier in the day. The realization struck Kuga like a bolt, the idea dawning on him that this vampire had been after his blood the entire time. He wondered if anything else they had done truly mattered to her, or if it was all driven by her craving. His mind replayed the moment she had commented on how good his blood tasted when they first fought, and she took a small sample. Kuga, exhaling in resignation, rolled up his sleeve and offered his arm, telling her that she only needed to ask. He added that he didn't mind giving her some blood as long as it wasn't enough to kill him. Alicia's expression lit up with joy, her eyes glowing with excitement as she asked if he truly meant it. Her tone was filled with such eager delight that it was impossible to miss her overwhelming enthusiasm for his reluctant generosity. Alicia embraced him warmly, expressing her gratitude before carefully inserting the syringe into his arm. She began drawing a small amount of blood, her expression growing elated as she let the crimson droplets fall onto her fingers. She licked the blood eagerly, her face turning a deep shade of red, an unmistakable happiness radiating from her. In no time, she appeared completely satisfied, and Kuga, now standing, asked her if that amount was sufficient. She nodded enthusiastically, assuring him that it was more than enough. Curiosity got the better of him, and he questioned her about the stereotypical behavior of vampires biting directly. This caught Alicia off guard, but she composed herself quickly and responded that doing so would be problematic for several reasons. Kuga was visibly startled by her response, his eyes widening as he tried to grasp her meaning. She continued calmly, explaining that he was her special other, not just an underling, which left Kuga momentarily speechless. The night passed, and the morning arrived swiftly. The following day found Alicia and Kuga back in the dungeon, where Alicia was effortlessly slicing through adventurers. Each defeat brought her joy, and she declared with excitement that it marked the 26th victim. Kuga, observing her enthusiasm, mentally tallied the numbers. Including the 4 from the previous day and the 4 from that morning, the total stood at 8 new conquests. This led him to realize that Alicia had apparently hunted 18 individuals before, bringing the total to 26. With only 4 more to meet the first requirement to become an S-rank boss, progress was nearly complete. As they continued streaming, a flood of comments poured in. Viewers commended Alicia's impressive work, some noting how quickly the day's events had unfolded compared to the previous day. Others complained about the lack of thrill or commented on how close she was to meeting her target, encouraging her to do her best. Seeing the comments shift toward a more supportive tone made Kuga realize that the audience was gradually becoming accustomed to the adventurer hunting dynamic. Even so, a fair number of viewers still expressed their disdain. Internally, Kuga resolved to finish this first requirement as quickly as possible, ready to locate the remaining 4 targets. While wandering deeper into the dungeon, a voice suddenly called out to them, greeting them from behind. Alicia and Kuga turned to see who had spoken. The chat exploded with comments identifying the newcomers as the Monster Slayer team. Messages flooded in with viewers confirming their identity and expressing shock at their appearance. Some remarked that the Monster Slayer team was affiliated with the renowned S-rank party known as Evil Slayer. As the leader of the Monster Slayer team introduced their group, the chat erupted with excitement. One viewer noted that the Monster Slayer team was part of a larger network under the fourth-ranked S-rank party, Evil Slayer, famed for their brutal monster hunting methods. Another viewer listed the top 4 S-rank parties, beginning with the Illusion team, known for traditional dungeon exploration. Second was AIUE King, specializing in solo dungeon grinding. The third-ranked team, the Duelists, focused on one-on-one combat. Evil Slayer, ranked 4th, had built its reputation on viciously toying with their prey before eliminating them, and their affiliate Monster Slayer followed similar practices. The leader of Monster Slayer addressed Alicia and Kuga, commenting with a smirk that the duo had been stirring up quite a fuss. He asked if they were aware of how much attention they had garnered. Alicia, her face turning bright red, smiled warmly and asked if that was truly the case. Meanwhile, viewers in the comment section began warning her to be cautious, reminding her that the Monster Slayer team was exceptionally dangerous. The 4 members of the Monster Slayer team carried themselves with a distinct air of overconfidence, their grins reminiscent of predators savoring the moment before pouncing on their prey. Taking fighting stances, they launched a coordinated wave of attacks at Alicia and Kuga. The duo swiftly dodged the initial assault, prompting the leader of the Monster Slayers to mockingly question their evasive maneuver. Alicia, seemingly unfazed, remarked on their apparent strength, asking if they were truly A-rank. The leader affirmed her suspicion, and Alicia, with a sly expression, commented on her unexpected good fortune. She mused about how this encounter would allow her to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, declaring it a bargain unlike any she had ever seen. With his sword raised and his face twisted in rage, the Monster Slayer leader charged at Alicia, his confidence apparent in every step. Alicia met his assault effortlessly, casually blocking his powerful strikes. The leader persisted, his attacks growing more forceful, yet Alicia continued to parry without breaking a sweat. Viewers flooded the comment section, debating the prowess of the A-rank. Some acknowledged their strength, particularly praising the fencer with the short sword, identified as Shidahara. Others warned Alicia to watch out for him, noting his quick and precise movements. As the fight escalated, the mage of the Monster Slayer team conjured a fireball, hurling it toward Alicia. She evaded the fiery projectile, letting it pass harmlessly by, before launching her counterattack against the rest of the group. Her strikes were met with resistance, the team skillfully defending themselves with shields and coordinated tactics. In the midst of the chaos, Shidahara leapt into the air, positioning himself behind Alicia with his sword poised for a decisive strike. As he descended, he taunted her for leaving herself open and swung his blade in a wide arc, confident in his imminent victory. Before the attack could land, Kuga intervened, blocking the strike with his own sword. Shidahara's expression shifted to one of frustration and rage as he demanded an explanation for the interference. Alicia turned to Kuga and assured him that she could handle herself, asking if he was aware of that. Kuga acknowledged her statement, but Alicia, with a teasing tone, noted that it was still good to see him stepping up after remaining a spectator for so long. Kuga, taken aback by her words, realized she had anticipated his intervention in earlier battles. With a bright and cheerful expression, Alicia encouraged Kuga, her excitement evident. She declared that Kuga would handle Shidahara while she dealt with the remaining 3 in the back. Kuga agreed, and Alicia dashed past Shidahara, her sudden movement angering him. Shidahara shouted after her, addressing her as vampire and demanding to know if she thought she could simply walk past him unchallenged.